Good morning. Well, that was a nice pleasant night on the last pontoon of Holyhead Marina. 6:30 in the morning, just got up. Need to go see what the weather looks like outside. Well, it looks like the sun's trying to get up. And it's quite warm and pleasant. And there's a little tiny bit of air, but only tiny. We need a bit more than that. That flag's not moving there. Oh, well, there's a little bit on mine. Maybe I'll be a little bit luckier. Yeah, well, the sun's just about creeped up there. When you look, there's some masts with a bit of colour on. And here's my brother. He's out of bed. Time for my first cup of tea, I think, so I can wake up properly. The plan is to get underway, really, as soon as possible. So I'll have my cup of tea and I'll have a bit of breakfast on the go. We could have left a few hours ago and used a bit more of the favourable ebb. But what we're planning on doing is just using the last of the favourable ebb, just to get us past the stacks. Well, I set off as soon as I possibly can, and while I'm motoring down the big long wall, I get my mainsail up. I'm more or less motoring into the wind at the moment, which means there is a little bit of wind, which is a good sign, and I'm going to be going the other way, which is another good sign because that means I might get some use out of it. Coming up to the end of the wall, I can see lobster pots. Can you see them sitting there? Well, it's nice and easy to see them while the water's calm, but what about when it's rough? As you round the head of the wall, there's even more lobster pots to watch out for. So if you're travelling south, you need to keep an eye out for them and make sure you don't run through any, because they'll be along this passage. As you can see, there's not too much wind at this particular moment in time, and I'm keeping the engine on because we want to get past the stacks and make good use of this ebb, because when it turns, the water that has to pass the stacks will be fast moving, coming the opposite way, and we won't have the wind to punch it, so we'll be punching it under motor. So we may as well use the ebb in our favour now and not fight the flood later. A quick look out with my breakfast in hand to make sure nothing's appeared while I've been putting my flakes in the bowl. I've got a good idea. I can keep lookout from the bow and I can eat my breakfast up there, as there's not a lot happening anywhere at the moment and we're just motoring along. Right, we just departed here, the marina in Holyhead, and we had to make ourselves round this breakwater wall here. This is our heading now towards these points of land that stick out called the stacks. That's it, you can see ahead of us just there. As soon as we round that, we can change our course to port a bit. As we've already worked out, the water runs round Anglesey really fast, and some of the areas that stick out into the fast flow create troubled waters. We call these the overfalls. The stacks, which is the bit that sticks out ahead of us, that's one of the notorious areas. Normally because you get a southwesterly being the prevailing wind and an ebb hitting it, normally makes the sea stand up. Today we're travelling southeast at this particular moment in time, and we've got an easterly with us. So the current and the wind are fairly close together, although the wind has not got a lot of strength in it, which is also helpful at this particular moment in time to keep the water nice and flat. It's obvious approaching from the north that the first part we're going to come to is North Stack. So that's North Stack in front of us there. Goes across Holly Island and meets the wall. The Holyhead breakwater wall starts there by the big chimney and makes its way around to the end. And there's my brother there silhouetted in the sun. North Stack's buildings are quite easy to see with the white painted walls and the white painted buildings, and in the distance it's quite easy to see South Stack Lighthouse sticking up on its rock. I'm doing about 4.5–5 knots through the water. The boat's going a little bit quicker, making a bit of use of the ebb. The water here is very settled at the moment. We're actually in the last hour of the ebb at the moment, which is helping because everything's slowing down around us. It's still a little bit with us, so we're going in the right direction, but as you can see, it's lovely and calm. Today could be made a whole lot better if the wind decided to play ball. We seem to be making our own wind at the moment and just motoring. There's a passage inshore of the two stacks, which a lot of boats use when they're opposing the tide. You can see the yacht in the distance there. He's taking this inshore passage. It back eddies and it can be out of turbulent waters as well. But there are rocks around those areas, so you have to watch out for them. Southsack, sitting on its own rock, has a little bridge going over to it for people to walk over. It was open to visitors for many, many years, but I'm not sure if it is anymore. There's a set of steps that go down the rocks behind it off Holly Island and go down to the bridge and carry her across to the lump of rock that Southsack itself sits on. Once Southsack has been rounded, it's more or less calm and open waters that lie ahead of you, wherever your chosen path may be. It's sort of nice to say, see you later to Southsack. Well, it's coming to about slack water now. There's very little wind and there's very little tide. So it's more or less we're doing what the boat's making us do. Not forgetting that this piece of water can have a different face on a different day. But today at least it's got its happy face on. Can you see that? Just where you don't want it. Right in the centre of the screen. That's it. Him. There. Lobster pots. It actually looks like the flood started when you look at them. And it's starting to come against us. Not much in the way of slack water there then. It's about now I notice these are not alone. And a little bit ahead of them is the next set. And then the next set. And so on. I think it would be nice if there was a rule saying they had to have a flag. At least that would make them easier to see when the water was rough. They are, however, a good indication of which way the tide's flowing when you look at the pickup on them. Looking toward the silhouetted land, I can see a rock sticking up on its own at low water. Well, that'll be just about covered in about an hour. This is our heading at the moment, southeasterly, and we're heading down to here, which is the Narrows, Bellin Narrows or Bellin Point. Still motoring, as I guess I haven't got anything else that I can do unless the wind kicks in, because the tide's going to start coming against us soon. And that means if we want to drift, we're going to drift back to where we come from, which isn't a good plan. So why does it appear I'm going the wrong way then if the tide's going to be going the other way? Well, it's simple. We need a lot of water to get over Carnarvon Bar, which is in front of Bellin Narrows. And the Carnarvon Bar is now starting to fill for the next 6 hours. So that's why we're travelling this way. It gives us 6 hours basically to get down there, or a little bit less by the time it turns. So at least for now, we'll enjoy the motor and just keep our fingers crossed that the wind decides to show its face today and give us a bit of a break. The way the day's kicking in, it's going to be a hot one today. You can tell by that mist on the water and the flat calm that it's going to be a stinker of a day. There's a fishing boat coming towards me. I hope he's seen me. As you can see from the chartlet here, I've got 12 miles to go to our desired destination. Well, we've got 6 hours to do it as well. So 2 knots for 6 hours gives you 12 nautical miles. So if we only have to do 2 knots, it's not really hard to achieve. I know it's going to be 2 knots over the ground and not 2 knots through the water, but we can still do it if we get a little bit of wind quite easily. So fingers crossed, legs crossed, and let's hope it arrives. 2,750 RPM. That normally gives me 5 knots through the water. I'm doing a little bit better than that, but that doesn't mean anything is helping me. It means that we're in a back eddy, and the back eddy's helping us. This side of the island is all back eddies. If you know how to sail them all, you could do really well in a race along here. And if you don't, put the kettle on and have a cup of tea. Everything sorts itself out just nice when the brew's on. And I've only had the one today, and that was at 6:30 this morning. The engine's been running for quite a bit, so I think I'll check the exhaust. Still pumping lovely, no black smoke coming out and no steam coming out. Perfection. Revs are 2750 and singing along. There's a little bit of pattern on the water, so I think we'll get the sails out and see if we can find any air on the water. Any air at all will do. A light breeze, a very light breeze. Zephyrs really don't care as long as it can keep the sails filled. Time to forget about it and concentrate a little bit on the sails, because they're my cloth engine, they play with the wind. And we always try and get the most out of them when we think about it, don't we? We don't think, wow, I'm flying along at 5 knots, let's reduce the sails and do 3. We want the max all the time, the best we can achieve. Although I've pulled the sails out, not a lot happening with them because I'm motoring and I'm making too much wind on the nose. So I'm going to shut the engine off. Shut the engine off, the boat will slow down. The boat will slow down and the sails will get to feel what actual wind there is there. And if there's anything that we can use, well then we're going to use it. Right, we're starting to slow a little. And there's still a little bit that can be pulled in on that sail. So I best pull it in a little bit and see if I can squeeze the wind out of it. We're about here now, and it looks like the wind's filling in from this direction, which is quite close on the nose for me, so I might lose ground, so I'll do my best to stay in. I know from past experience that when you're going down a patch of water where there's hills on the land and there's openings on the land, that the wind strengths come and go. So I'm going to try and play them. I'm going to try and play to the strengths of the little bit of wind that come through the openings in the land. See if I can get anywhere. Well, I'm making me 2 knots now, and if I can keep that up, I'm going to be a happy chappy. It won't bother me if I'm a couple of minutes late and I have to motor the last couple of yards, as long as I've had a sail in. Tarka looks like he's miles ahead now. He must have a better patch of wind. I'll be watching the water with an eagle eye, I think. That's if I can put my camera down and stop playing games. It is a beautiful coast though, but it is about now I can feel me tummy starting to rumble, so I think I better start thinking about filling it up. The boat's started to slow a bit now. I best have a look. We've got 7 knots on the port beam, 1.5 over the ground. Not fantastic, but I'm not going to panic over losing a half a knot at the moment. It can come back as easily as it goes. Just got to watch the patches on the water. There's still wind out there. A little bit of air in the sails. That mottled pattern you can see on the water there, that's the wind. That's what's keeping us moving. And don't forget, we're punching into a knot, so we're actually doing 2.5 knots through the water and 7 knots of wind. The boat still gives me the feeling it's getting somewhere. It's moving, it's going in the right direction, and it's got decent steerage. And all that, considering there's hardly enough wind to lift the telltales, isn't too bad. The bow's not crashing through the water, but it is passing through the water. And while it's moving through the water, we're sailing, aren't we? And that's what it's all about. You can't have the big buzzy times all the time. A little bit of ghosting goes a long, long way to relax the brain. He's still doing well, staying ahead of me, but I do think I'm creeping up on him a little bit. One thing's for sure, he looks better in focus, but he doesn't look like he's got any more wind than I have. I walked round the boat with the camera, take a couple of pictures of the boat, and I noticed out the corner of my eye, just to the left there where you can't see, somebody's put a spinnaker up, trying to leave me behind now. Well, I suppose it must be a cruising shoot, because I think we're far too close to the wind to get anything baggy to work. But if he can do it, power to him. Well, I don't think that's worked out to plan. I think his wind's completely gone. It's just hanging there, waiting for a breath of air. And I've actually still got a breath of air. I'm still moving in this. And this is definitely a mill pond. Bin bags. Well, I consider myself very lucky now, because I've still got my sails full while his are empty. And I can see where the wind is on the water, and it doesn't look like it's here, it looks like it's just over there. But just a little bit higher must be enough for me to fill my sails. And now I've taken to sailing from sitting on the front, just watching the world go by. With the sun burning down on me, and my couple of knots, looking for a knot more maybe. Oh, and my latte. Then the world's at peace now, isn't it? Well, I can hear something coming somewhere, and it won't be long before it gets here and kills the peace and quiet. And that's it. It's a jet ski, and he's racing. He's going across my bow, and somebody's going across my stern, and he's racing with him, and they're both having lots of fun, making lots of noise and taking away the tranquility. Well, I'm sure they're going as quick as they came, so bye-bye to them. Well, it doesn't take a genius to see where I am now. That's the Anglesey circuit racetrack up there. And it's motorcycle racing today. And the wind's coming off the land. So with a little bit of luck, I'll get the snifters of two-stroke. Yummy, yummy. And that's what makes a pirate a pirate. Castrol. Still got enough wind to keep me going. And I've been watching my brother, and he's running into a slack spot, and then he gets a bit, and then it goes away, and then he gets a bit. He should be in here with me, making the best use of these bits that slip through the land. And there's a beautiful landfall here as well, with a lot of beaches. That's Big Newborough Beach there, Newborough Forest. Very popular, normally filled with a lot of people. And that bit sticking out there is Llanthowyn Island. There's a little cove there called Pilot's Cove, and it's a very popular anchorage. I can see a yacht anchored over there. It's found a place all to himself. Well, easterlies and this side of the island go together with anchoring, but not really any other sort of wind direction fits with it. But we've had easterlies for quite a bit, so a lot of people are enjoying this side of the island that wouldn't normally. Not a million miles to go before we get to the bar now, and we're doing okay for time. So I'm quite pleased with our little sail, although it be a 2 to 3 knot sail. The wind's come full circle, and as you can see, it's on my starboard quarter now, and we're doing a nice 3 knots, so I'm very happy with it. Don't forget, we're still bucking tide. I don't think the wind direction's really changed, and I think the land's heated up that much. It's now drawing a sea breeze onto itself, and we're sailing a sea breeze, which is a nice thing to get. It's a Brucey bonus. There's 2 marks on Llanthowyn Island, but I don't actually know whether they've got individual names or not. I just know the 2 marks are there. It gives you something to look for when you're heading towards Carnarvon Bar, I suppose. Something that stands out from the matted crowd. On a day like today, it's a very beautiful spot, but it's a place I only ever visit with a lot of caution. A friend of mine once punched a hole in the bottom of his boat round here, and there's plenty of rocks under the water to do so. Most of them are marked on charts, but there's a couple that ain't. Llanthowren Island and Bellin Point are either side of the Carnarvon Bar, so this is sort of the gateway. So what we're doing now is we've got a cardinal to pass which clears the rocks from Llanthowren on our port side, and after that we've got to pick up the buoyage system to take us through the bar, although there's plenty of water at the moment and we're not too worried about hitting anything. We're still ghosting along, and we're still making our 3 knots, which is the fastest we've been going all day, and that'll probably pick up a little bit in a minute because we'll lose the booking of tide and it'll start going with us because it's rushing in obviously to the Menai Straits. Very busy round here at the moment with fishing boats. They're all hanging round. It must be good fishing round the rocks. I don't honestly know, I don't fish that much. All as I normally think is there's nicer places to anchor where there's no rocks than nice places with rocks. It's a very beautiful place, and it's easy and a safe passage past it as well. Just stay far enough offshore that you're not going to get anywhere near any of the rocks. There's a cardinal mark there. As long as you keep that between you and the land, like he is, you can't go far wrong. The Carnarvon locals love it round here. The fishing boats are all over the place fishing. The yachts get round there and all anchor round the rocks. They know where they are, and if you know where something is, you feel very confident. And it is a beautiful place. The cove they call Pilot's Cove, the hide's just behind that rock there. It's quite a small cove and big enough really for one small yacht if you're lucky, or a couple of fishing boats shoved in there. But you certainly all can't go in, so you'd all sit outside most of the time and just ride your anchor, and if you want to go ashore for barbecues or what have you, you do so on your dinghy. There's the cardinal mark. You're safe this side of it, that's simple. I really don't think my brother wants me to catch him. I don't know what gives me that feeling. Well, if he doesn't pay attention, he knows what's going to happen, doesn't he? Yeah, and he wasn't paying attention, was he? So, that's what happened, isn't it? Well, we've still got 30 minutes of this running down here to get in through the bar safely before the tide changes. As we neared the estuary of the Menai Straits, we found the wind was pouring out of it, so we donned the sails, put on the motors, and we were going to motor our way in. That bank in front of us, or dead ahead of me, the sandbank that you can see, just the other side of that is our anchorage, Abermenai, and the gap where the boats are coming out of is Bellin Narrows, and the landfall on my starboard side, which is the right hand side of the screen, that's Bellin Point. The land here can either pass you very, very quickly or very, very slowly, depending on whether you've still got the flood going in or the ebb coming out. We're sort of neutralish now. Maybe it's just about turned against us, but if it has, it's only going to be half a knot or so. Making the entrance through Bellin Narrows, I stay as far as I can to port, straight over by the land. The land's very progressive, what you see is what you get, so you can go quite close to it. You can watch your depth sounder, but you need to get out of the main flow of current, and it's easiest to do when you get close to the land. Inside, we know what we're going to do. We're going to pick a spot and anchor if there's not too many boats already in there. Anchoring to me is getting into the anchor locker, which is straightforward enough, and then my warp is all on top of my chain. I have it tied together and I undo it when I want to use it. So there's the warp. Then also I feel like I'm ready then. It's ready to deploy, so then I go and look for my spot. As you can see, I'm still motoring along here at a couple of knots. When I find a spot, I just let the anchor go. I've got an electric windlass, which is now mechanical because the motor's gone, so I just use it like a standard windlass, or a manual windlass. I deploy the first metre or so of the anchor, knowing it's still not hit the ground, and then go and check my position to see that I'm still happy where I want to be. A quick check to see that the depth where I've stopped has got the scope that I require to stay floating should the tide go out. And if it has, I come back and I'm ready to drop the anchor down. So I just release it and let it go. I don't let it go fast, I feed it out, and I feel actually for the thump where if it hits the bottom, you actually feel the dead spot. It's about there at the moment. After the anchor's hit the bottom, you watch the anchor chain will start moving forward as the boat starts falling backwards and it starts gripping. Well, I think I'm laying chain rather than it being all on top of itself. In my mind, as the boat slips backwards, the chain's obviously paying out in a forward straight line. So you can see the chain at the front of the boat tries to go forward, and then I pay a bit out and then it runs back. I think I anchor much the same as anybody else as far as scope and method goes. 3 or 4 times in sort of light conditions like this, and the depth sounder was just over 4 metres when I turned up. So 12 to 16 metres would be enough, but I'll probably stick 20 out or get close to 20, and that's only because I've got a mark on the chain for 20, so once I've seen it, I know I'm not far away from it. Plus there's a metre from the windlass down to the water, isn't there? After I hope the chain's laid and the anchor's bit, I look around for marks on the land that I can keep a close eye on to see if anything's moving. If you pick 2 lines of transit, one in front of the other one, they should stay exactly where they are, as long as your boat's staying exactly where it is. Once you're comfortable that the boat's holding nice and not going anywhere, you need to make sure you've got the correct amount of chain down or warp, whichever you're using. Therefore, you need to look for markers. I put little plugs in places. There's one there. That single one just says it's 10 metres to there, so I need more chain out. As I drop more chain out, the chain comes flat at the bow, and as the boat sort of slips backward again, you'll see the chain will run towards the front of the boat again. So you can see the chain just starting to move now. Here it is, showing its face, which means the boat's starting to slip backwards, and the chain is obviously starting to tighten up. At this point, a lot of people, once they've paid out what they're going to put out for chain-wise or warp-wise, then go back to the engine, stick it in a stern, and give it a couple of revs and let the anchor bury itself. But I'm a little bit lazy on that one. I like to feel it thump, feel it drag into place, and then feed the chain. And I just sit on that. And it's not let me down yet, but I dare say it could do one day. I'm happy now that she's bit and she doesn't appear to be going anywhere. So I'm going to let the rest of my warp out, or my chain out. I've got about 10 metres out just before, but I want to stop when I see about 20 metres. 20 metres down in the anchor locker will show itself as 2 little red marks in my chain. When I've seen them, I'm happy. I know there's at least 18 metres going to be out there, and I want to scope over 16 at 4 to 1. Notice when I stop letting the chain out and lock it up, that the chain quickly gathers a bit of pace at the bow and moves forward to show that the boat's being held quite well on the chain. There's always a good ebb here, and it lasts about 9 hours in the same direction, and the flood's nowhere near as strong. So I think if it'll hold the ebb at the maximum flow, you won't have any worries about anything else. Once I'm happy with the amount of ground tackle I've put out, and it still remains to be just chain and not chain and rope, then I want to make sure I'm not connected from the boat to the chain without a piece of rope in the circuit. So I have a little hook on a bit of rope, which I stick over a link on the chain, pass it through a bow roller, and take it to one of my deck cleats, which just happens to be hiding underneath the lid off the anchor locker. When I've got it safely on the cleat, I then need to let the chain go a little bit further out so that it runs to a slack point and the load is taken up by the little snubber I'm putting on, which has just gathered a knot. But there you go. If a knot can appear, it always does. So I just let it out like that. Now it's on the rope and not the chain. I can put a bit of chain out and make the chain loose. Any load or snatching that now comes down that chain from waves or anything else won't be directly a rigid impact onto one of my deck fittings. It will be absorbed, hopefully, by this little bit of line that we've put in. I do, however, need to keep that snubber I've just put on straight coming out of the anchor roller, so I have to put another little line off there onto the cleat on the other side so it comes out at a nice angle. This hopefully will remove any eagerness for it to want to chafe on anything. I don't want to appear to have enough hands, so I think I'll have to use my foot as an hand to hold that line while I'm working. Believe it or not, after faffing around for a bit, I actually do get it tied on. It's actually a poor bit of organisation on my behalf. I'm just using odd bits of string that have been hanging up there on the pulpit. Lashings, I call them. Little bits that you can use for odd jobs. Well, I've had to tie 2 of them together to make this thing work. But there you go. It looks like it's worked. I need to just take this handle and stick it somewhere safe. This is only for releasing, not for bringing back. So I just drop it in there. But I've put it on a bit of string so I can pull it back out without sticking my arm down. Looks quite good, eh? Centralised through the bow roller. Well, I can chill and relax now, I think. And have a little look round and see how many boats are here. I know, I don't know. And there's a couple of boats, and that's a bit blurry. Still, can't get this focus right. One other thing, when I'm anchoring, there can be a lot of boats in an anchorage, but if the tide is running a long way or the time you're going to be there, make sure there's nothing behind you. And that way, if you do slip, you'll slide past or in between any boats that are behind you in the line of the current. To check where I might drift to, should I drag or drag to, I centralise the boom and look down the boom. I use that like a barrel of a gun. That's where I'm going to go, should I drag, down there. Nah, I'm not quite alone. There's a couple of boats here. I know some of them. And there's somebody else hiding somewhere. Where is he? There he is. RJ and Tarka. Well, here's me with the sun going down from the land. And there's a bit of sandbank starting to come out. The night's ready to disappear now and there's more people arriving. Right, let's just enjoy the sunset and the rest of the night. And I'll see you all again tomorrow for leg 3.